Teraz by sme teda prešli k diskusii. Téma nových a moderných nemocníc je na Slovensku, ako som spomínal na začiatku, veľmi aktuálnou témou aj v súvislosti s množstvom zdrojov, ktoré v budúcnosti budú plynúť do našej krajiny, či už z plánu obnovy a odolnosti, alebo z európskych štrukturálnych a investičných fondov, respektíve kapitálových investícií štátneho rozpočtu. Zároveň tu máme aj zdroje, ktoré môžu byť návratné zdroje financovania. Čiže o všetkých týchto otázkach sa budeme rozprávať s našimi vzácnymi hostiami. V podstate tie témy, ktorými by som začal, je zahraničná dobrá prax. Na Slovensku máme, ak vôbec máme, problém s výstavbou nemocníc. Máme v podstate jednu novú nemocnicu, ktorá bola postavená privátnym sektorom. O nových nemocniciach sa rozprávame už dlhšiu dobu, že by mohli byť postavené vo viacerých mestách. Uvidíme, aká bude realita, ale vypočujeme si možno tú zahraničnú dobrú prax z krajín, kde sa už investície do novej a modernej infraštruktúry udiali. A v tomto ohľade by som poprosil v prvom rade Marcina Jedřichovského, and I will pose the question maybe in English just to be sure. Marcin is the director of the Krakow University Hospital, which has been constructed and is already fully functioning in Krakow. It has been a long process from the first project planning, during the preparation of the project documentation, looking for finances, trying, of course, to get support from the national and the city level for this new infrastructure investment. Marcin, if you could maybe tell us how long it took you from the project idea to really move to the new premises of the hospital.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I must say that I'm very happy that I can be here. I thank Peter to invite me for this meeting. I must say that when I look for the situation on the Slovakia, it's quite similar to the situation that I found in Poland about 8 years ago when we talk about the hospitals. Yes, I probably wouldn't be here and wouldn't decide to be here during this meeting if I was only the director of the hospital. So I be the guy who came at the end and become the director of the hospital in Krakow. I decided to visit you here because I was the person who be with this investment for the very, very beginning. I work for the university. I was the financial director, and one of my biggest contract that I signed was the contract for the new hospital. There was the contract for the new hospital. After that, I was the proxy of the Jagiellonian University rector responsible for this investment, and at the end, I became the director of the hospital. All process from the beginning took us about 8.5 years. But honestly, when we talk about the hospital, we must say that the plan of the building hospital in Kraków-Prokocim was older than me, because the hospital in Prokocim, Kraków-Prokocim, was a part of the medical campus. The element of the medical campus was the children's hospital, was the student houses, was the infrastructure of the university, and also was the hospital for the adult. Other things that I have mentioned during this campus model has been created, but there was still missing the hospital for the adults. And of course, we spent a lot of money because there was different decision, the governments changed, the rector of the university changed, and each has their own idea how to build the hospital. Everything changed when on the horizon they become the idea that they can be the extra money for the hospital. For the hospital, we have at least three sources of the investment. One of which is obvious because we are not building the private hospital. There should be the money from the government. This is the most obvious situation because we not build the private hospital, we build the the national hospital, and of course this is the obligation of the government to deliver the money for this hospital. The second part of the money, and of course in Poland we don't have those money. After the first time I met Peter was the situation that you realize that this is not the money of the Ministry of Finance of the Poland. This is the loan from the European Investment Bank. And of course, it was a problem for me. Why? Because I don't have all the money for the hospital. I have only the 60%, and I still was missing 40% of the budget. And my idea was to find the cheapest in the financing, and the cheapest financing was in the European Investment Bank. Unfortunately, they closed me this road, because the absorption of the capital in one investment of the European Investment Bank is limited, and I wasn't able to use this money. So I decided to use the EU funds, but not from the European Investment Bank, but we get the region funds, which has been spent for the equipment. There was also the third position for the budget. It was the money that we use from the selling the old part of the hospital. Our situation in Krakow is quite similar to the situation of Martin Hospital. I have this great pleasure a few weeks ago to have a visit of the guy from this hospital. I strongly believe that because they are very much convenient to build the hospital, I hope, I cross my finger that they will manage to build the hospital. I offer them help, and because I'm a guy who tried to not to say what I made good, but I always said what I was made wrong. Yes, because this is the value. It's not worth to say I made everything great. It's worth to say I've made this kind of mistake. Be careful not to make the same mistake as me. So we have the same situation. We have the old hospital in the at least 50 separate building. There was a number of problems with the communication, number of problems with the parking places, number of problems with the equipment, number of problems with the be able to arrange everything in the secure way for the patient. So no one, believe me, no one in Krakow have the problem with this that will decide to build a new hospital.
Thank you very much, Marcin. You mentioned a very important piece of information, or even more, and it's related to the duration of constructing a new hospital. So from starting to work on the project documentation up until the first patient to be accepted, it took the hospital 8.5 years, which also in our experience is the standard duration of building a new hospital. Right now in Slovakia, we have the resources of almost 1 billion euro in the Recovery and Resilience Plan, where one of the obligation is to finalize these constructions until 2026. It is the obligation of the European Commission. So we have certain projects that are already prepared and ready for the investment, but still the length of the construction and all the problems with the public procurement that could cross our ways are really providing us a headache in this process. I would like to ask now my former colleague from the European Investment Bank, Adam Kozierkiewicz, who is connected from Warsaw, to share his opinion about building new hospital infrastructure. We have been working together on several hospital projects in Poland, but also in Latvia. So Adam, if you could maybe share your experience and knowledge with us that could enrich our processes of preparing new hospital infrastructure in Slovakia. Over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm really glad to be here. I understand that you are watching at me on the screen now.
Exactly.
It is very strange feeling, truly speaking. But so referring quickly to this last point you mentioned about the timing. Indeed, in case of big hospitals, the time is long, generally speaking. The construction probably is even not the longest period of the timing. I think that Director Jędrychowski will confirm that preparatory measures are even longer and to some extent even less predictable, because sometimes there are problems with procurement processes, sometimes there are problems with the budget. I have to warn you that it is quite likely that in the coming years the cost of construction may rise quite quickly, because there is an accumulation of different sources. We know that the Resilience Recovery Fund plus the new financial perspective may potentially... Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry. What I wanted to say that there might be a accumulation of resources available, which will create a pressure on prices. So it may happen that even if you start a tender and at the end of the day the prices will be higher than you expected, which may potentially impact the timing again. Yes. So generally speaking, timing is very delicate and important element concerning the time perspective for the RRF and the new financial perspective. You have mentioned that the timing for RRF is end of 26. Well, probably it might be potentially extended, but of course it is not decided yet. But in case of bigger investments, it would be wise, I think, to make at least a preliminary dividing into phases or stages, into some elements which could be regarded to some extent separately or independently, yes, to offer a kind of first stage from one source which has a shorter time period, and the second stage from the longer one. So this is a quick reaction for your comments concerning timing. But now I would like to switch quickly to my presentation, which will be, I hope, very concise. Let me share the screen. Oh, I cannot. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Do you see the screen? Maybe.
We see the screen, but there is no presentation.
No presentation. Oh.
But maybe if you could do it without the slides.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I will do it without the slides. All right. So. Sorry. So now it's clean. Yes. All right. So. Yes. So let me then follow the talk without the slides. So generally, what Jaspers is doing, we are providing support to promoters of projects which are funded at least partly from the ESIF funds, from structural funds. This is one thing. And we are generally funded from the European Commission and AIB. So we are, let's say, our services are free of charge. And we are aiming at the quality of the project and the documentation in order to make that the project is proceeded, let's say, quickly and relatively smoothly through the different bureaucratic and decision-making processes. And in our efforts to support the projects, we are taking a special emphasis on several issues. First thing is the context of the investment. It's quite important to have a clear view how the hospital will be functioning in the general in the general environment, let's say, how it will be functioning in a collaboration with other hospitals in the region, what will be its role in the division of work, because as we know, hospitals are not not operating in a vacuum. They are heavily dependent on quality of other parts of the healthcare system. And it's very important that the new investment, which is envisaged during the, let's say, designing process, that the new investment well fits to the general environment, to collaboration with the primary care settings, generally outpatient care, but also collaboration and division of works with other hospitals. It is a very unfavorable situation when hospitals are, let's say, competing for patients and for personnel. Yes, well, there are different views about it, but generally, because the hospitals are not working on a purely commercial and let's say free market environment, there is a, let's say, well-grounded opinion that designing of hospitals should be made in a planned manner. So generally, hospitals should fit to the environment. They shouldn't be redundant with the other hospitals in the region. They shouldn't provide excessive capacity when it's not necessary. And unfortunately, designing of hospital requires, let's say, guessing. Yes, it requires forecasting, which is difficult, among others, because the timing from the start of the process to the moment when the hospital starts operation is long. Yes, how to properly estimate what will be the actual demand for hospital services in a period from, let's say, 8 years from now, yes, or 10 years from now. And the challenge for the managers and the designers of hospitals is to make that the forecast is made even not for 10 years ahead, but even 15 or 20 years ahead, which is, as we know, very difficult. So one of the thing which needs to be considered is a kind of a flexibility of infrastructure. Yes, flexibility of infrastructure. It is good to take it into account that it may happen that some functions and some elements of the hospitals will be changing and evolving during time. Yes, so it would be during the designing and predicting what the hospital should work, it should be taken into account that maybe some elements of the medical technologies will change so dramatically that, for example, some hospital patients will just disappear. Yes, they will be served not in the hospital but outside. Yes, they will be served in on the outpatient basis, or maybe they will be served at homes. So some prediction of flexibility is very important. Second thing is, it is very important to establish the objectives, the goals and the objectives of the investment. Usually the situation is that the hospitals are invented, or the projects of hospitals are designed without exactly verbalizing what is expected from the new infrastructure. Generally, people think that the new infrastructure will just replace the old one, but it usually we are trying to shift the thinking into direction to define what should be achieved through the new investment, to what extent the health of people, or maybe well-being, or maybe perception of health services, to what extent those elements should be affected by the new investment, because this makes a difference in the projecting what the new hospital is going to do. Yeah? Another story is microeconomic effectiveness. We know that this is the case of Slovakia, this is a case of Poland and many other countries, not all, but many, is that there is a shortage of personnel, of qualified personnel, medical personnel. So the most precious assets of hospital are people and their time, yes? People and their time. So designing a new infrastructure, it is very, let's say, much recommended to concentrate on saving of time, yes, on optimizing the labor processes in order to save humans, personnel, professionals' time, yes, to avoid unnecessary procedures or processes which consume personal time. Well, there is no single recipe for this, yes, but it is good to take into consideration this element and maybe combine this with the technologies, like, for example, installation of cameras and all communication devices, which allows for supervising of patients which are distributed in different places. Yes, for example, this. Another story is which we are considering is the financial and economic analysis. Generally, financial analysis which should present that there is a sustainability of the investment in terms of predictable sources of funding for operations. Yes, it is quite important element that the investment do not lead to a situation when the new hospital, for example, is draining out all the money from the local system. Yeah, this is such a, let's say, extreme situation, but generally it has to be considered that the funding operational sources for the hospital are not excessive comparing to the other elements of the sector. And the last element which I might potentially list is the risk analysis, which is a quite important element for managing the investment process, and it very much depends on the experience of managers. So if it is recommended always that experienced managers who have experience with big investments, they share their experience with the project managers or whoever, and list all the potential dangers which may arise during the process, because this risk analysis is an important element of managing risk. Yes, simply, if we predict properly the sources of risks, then we can also predict and plan some mitigants. At the end of my talk, I would like to draw your attention to a document which is called European semester and country reports, which are produced within the European semester. The country reports speaks about countries, each of the country separately, and lists and make an analysis of let's say issues which are required to address in different sectors. And there is such a country report for Slovakia, considering different elements, including health. And what I read in this document is that There are some elements which might potentially affect your planning of hospital infrastructure. First element, not related to hospitals directly, is a relative weakness of primary care, which makes that a big burden of care is shifted to hospitals. Yes. Well, what to do? I have no idea, but generally it has to be considered that the weak primary care makes that there is a number of unnecessary admissions to hospitals which needs to be tackled. Yes, maybe some methods of collaboration between hospitals and primary care could mitigate this problem to some extent. Another point which was mentioned in the country report was the what I already mentioned is the labor force. Yes, the deficits of skilled personnel, medical personnel, and here it is worth to mention that hospitals are not only treating people, but the hospitals also educating, training people. Yes, facilities for the training of medical personnel is very important in a big investment, especially in case of university hospitals. And the last thing which should be listed here is that there is the, let's say, there is such an opinion in the European semester that in Slovakia the expenditures for hospital care are too big comparing to other sectors of care. Yes, too big. I mean that probably it's a result of the weakness of outpatient care. So I would suggest that when designing the new hospitals, you think about the outpatient part of the hospital. Yes, because it doesn't need to be, let's say, separate from the hospital, but it needs to be. The hospital needs to be equipped with the strong outpatient element. Yes, well equipped in the technologies and, of course, premises. So this is what I wanted to share with you at the first round.
Thank you, Adam, for your valuable inputs. I have a lot of questions, but we will move now to Henrik as the next speaker, who is connected to us online to share his experience and knowledge with new hospital infrastructure. Henrik is from the Netherlands, so he has a lot of experience with new investments abroad.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I've prepared some slides, and I must say I'm honored to be here. I think it's a very important area to look into when you are in a country like Slovakia looking into infrastructure. I'm also very much agreeing with Adam and his rundown through how to invest and looking into how to do it the best way possible. In Denmark, one remark to Adam, in Denmark we are actually doing the opposite, trying to push patients from hospitals to the primary care in order to actually be focusing on being highly specialized, and also in order to create some kind of autonomy for each of the patients. So there are different tendencies throughout this healthcare sector. But first of all, I've been in charge of planning a greenfield hospital for 10 years and being a part of the board of directors for the existing hospitals. So my responsibilities and my experience are based on building the bridge between, the future and also being able to do the integration and make sure that planning new healthcare facilities is primarily a change management exercise. It is an investment for the future. And I also agree that in order to do that, you need to look into how to see your hospital as an asset management exercise. In Denmark, we have been planning new hospital facilities for the last 15 years. And I would say it probably takes among 10 and 15 years from planning to opening a new facility. And I think it's actually wise to be very thorough when you are planning, because when you are breaking ground, it is quite expensive to make mistakes. So be thorough and invite wise, experienced people and different kind of industries into your, advisory board in order to consider your options. So that's a tip from me. The hospital in the capital region in Hillerød, the requirements, we needed to design a hospital with only single patient rooms. It's 120,000 square meters, and the budget is approximately 700 million euros. The idea of this investment is actually to transform healthcare. So the requirement from the government was that 20% at least of the budget has to go to investments within IT and medical. And also a requirement, an objective was to reduce OPEX by 8%. For us, that was not an exercise just to reduce, but actually try to see it as an innovation obstruction and a way to introduce innovation, a way to actually learn from other industries in order to plan a new facility. And then also, I agree with Adam. The big task here is the capability to actually forecast, because we started the project 10, 15 years before opening. So for us, we constantly looked 20 to 30 years ahead in order to say, well, when we are opening a brand new facility, the people are actually expecting us to have a brand new and modern facility 5-10 years after we are opening. So in order to do that, you need to work with different kind of scenarios. You need to look into forecasting, and you need to actually look into forecasting, not only in healthcare, but actually in technology, in how people are living, family structures, and all kind of different patterns. So it requires different competences than just, the traditional ones. The other part from us was to try to redefine healthcare. We wanted to transform this project. We wanted to invest in technology, not only the modular parts, but actually understand mobile services. How can you actually integrate mobile technological services into a healthcare facility in order to maybe change the patterns from treating people at a facility to actually treating people at home or in outpatient clinics. We also had different other outcomes, reducing average lengths of stay, reducing readmissions, and also we wanted to deinstitutionalize a facility, because a facility like a hospital is, a facility for people. On the other hand, you only visit hospitals that are extremely institutionalized. People are anxious, people are scared, a situation. So you need to have surroundings that actually do the opposite, that comfort people, that integrate people into a different mindset. So our project here in Denmark did some forecasting and backcasting in order to actually work with a future scenario that hopefully was was pregnant when opening. And then, as Martin stated in the opening, we, as the last project in Denmark, were extremely focusing on what can we learn from our mistakes and the other projects' mistakes in order to actually redesign and navigate in a very complicated area. So we started to say, well, a hospital facility in the 70s up until 2010 has been very institutionalized. In German, the German language called it a Krankenhaus. We call it a sygehus in Denmark. And it's a very institutionalized wording. Now we look into to consider it as a hospital, be hospitality and inviting people, understanding the patient's needs. And in the future, we believe we actually see these facilities as healthcare hubs. And these are based by digitalization, the transition of the digital instruments, and especially transforming these kind of solutions. That requires new partnerships, inviting startups into creating new solutions, and don't be afraid of learning from other sectors, creating these kind of spaces with the professional from the clinicians and also with different sectors, especially design and technology. The other part we did was actually to engage with star architects. We engaged with an architectural practice from Switzerland who are famous for actually understanding big arenas. They have designed museums, stadiums, opera houses, places where there are a lot of logistics, but also places where people are engaged and come together. That was important for us to try to create something that actually was a place where we could create a community. When planning this, we also should look into how to urbanize, because planning on a greenfield is actually also a big investment because you are developing a new city. In our case, we actually increased the existing city by 20%. By organizing a healthcare area with the hospital, but also investing in residential areas, inviting big companies in. So we had these kind of potentials with public and private partnerships and recreative areas. If you see a lot of the other projects in Denmark, the typology of hospitals are quite institutionalized. For us, it was important to actually do something different, not saying that the big treatment machinery isn't important. It is highly important, but you need a different way of looking at these kind of facilities. They are, as we see it, more or less the definition of welfare in a country. So in order to do that, you need to actually get a multiple use of it and try to invite people in. These are the kind of typology you normally see in hospitals all over the place, from the tower to the block and to the core. And that is what you can do in planning. We also emphasize that we need something to be in a human scale. We didn't want a big building. We wanted, human scale building, even though it is a big building. 120,000 square meters is large. And then we wanted actually to invite the community, the locals inside for other activities in order to actually give something back to society. You see it here, we bring nature inside. We have a lot of recreative areas, and we are actually trying to do sustainable solutions by celebrating the local and protected areas. Also, we were focusing on, trying to create a unified building, one unified building, not several buildings, but one, in order to make it as efficient as possible, as in order to actually try to create, a a multi-use of the facility, and also in order to create most value in each of the square meters of the hospital. You can see it here, the use of material is primarily wooden materials, not the normal materials you see in a hospital, but actually something that we believe will create a sustainable use. And we also believe that this facility, if it's not going to be a hospital for 50 years, it could actually be changed. Again, the term flexibility could be changed into something else, like a community center. See it here again. And then we did something else. We also said, well, this hospital needs to be something more. We want to engage world-class art, cultural events into this, and we want to invite the community into this. So for us, the hope was actually it should be a place to visit for a Sunday walk, a place to be educated, to learn, a place to be inspired, and also a place that actually was to be considered an open area for the outside world, and especially to create new partnerships, not only from healthcare, but from other industries as well. And that's why we did a spin-out. We created a living lab, an independent living lab, where we said, well, we believe healthcare solutions in the future requires a lot of collaboration and requires different learnings and views from different sectors. So we said that the test bed, the test environment should be a hospital, it should be the municipality, the primary care, but normally it's quite difficult to actually get access to these sectors, and it's difficult to do some testing and some piloting in these areas. So we wanted to create a lab where startups, researchers, companies could test their products, supported by us, and we were focusing on being able to scale these solutions into actually implementing them, and also supporting these companies so they could reach new funding and hopefully go into a bigger market. So we believe these kind of views are extremely important when you are doing big public investments like a hospital. You need to have something more than just a place for treatment of people. So that's our patients. So that's our view of how to do it, combining and trying to have a outside view into different areas, and especially being have a collaborative mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henrik. I will just make a short summary of these first three speeches. We focused a lot on strategic planning. So when we are talking about new hospital infrastructure, long-term planning of the infrastructure is the key element. We need to think about the hospitals in a time range of the next 15 to 20 years, so that once this construction is done, the hospital provides an innovative environment for the patients. We also focused on new innovative solutions which are part of new hospital infrastructure, the startup environment, different kind of hackathons which are also bringing a lot of value, added value for the standard treatment that the hospitals are providing. Also, the urbanism that Henrik mentioned is an important element. Building or constructing a hospital should not be an isolated process. It should be naturally fitting into the environment where the hospital is being constructed and built, so that transport, schools, and other infrastructures are connected to these new infrastructures. But let's now focus on the Slovak reality, and I will switch to Slovak, and I will also give the word to a director of the Banská Bystrica Hospital. Takže skúsme sa možno porozprávať teraz o slovenskej realite. Máme v pláne viaceré investície do nemocničnej infraštruktúry. Máme rôzne projekty v rôznych štádiách rozpracovanosti, či je to univerzitná nemocnica v Martine alebo nemocnica v Banskej Bystrici. Pani Lapuníková, vy tiež plánujete nové investície do vašej nemocnice. Čo sú tie hlavné prekážky pri príprave tohto projektu a čo očakávate z hľadiska prekážok v oblasti realizácie?
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Ja musím povedať, že doposiaľ to bolo veľmi podnetné a zároveň by som to chcela nejakým spôsobom celé myšlienkovo uchopiť. A asi by som začala tak, že absolútne súhlasím s pánom Kozierkovičom, ktorý rozprával o tom, že je absolútne nevyhnutné vnímať potreby každého jedného regiónu predtým, ako dôjde k nejakému, podotýkam slovo, politickému rozhodnutiu o tom, že či sa bude stavať alebo rekonštruovať nejaký objekt. Ja si myslím, a keby som vzala, teraz by som rozprávala o dvoch veciach. Jedna vec je rekonštrukcia a druhá vec je výstavba. Čo sa týka inštitucionálneho riešenia, naozaj tie procesy, ktoré sú na Slovensku, sú extrémne zdĺhavé a je potrebné sa na ne veľmi koncentrovať. Tak keby som to mala zhrnúť, tak ja som sa nad tým hlboko zamyslela. Je to asi takých 7 krokov, ktoré sme my museli v rámci prípravy nášho verejného obstarávania realizovať. Inak to bolo rozhodnutie vlády o tom, že áno, že toto je to politické rozhodnutie, ideme do toho. Potom to bola príprava samotného projektu, štátna expertíza, posúdenie útvarom hodnoty za peniaze, ex ante kontrola na úrade verejného obstarávania, samotné verejné obstarávanie a následne ex post kontrola po realizácii verejného obstarávania, lebo chceme, aby to bolo všetko v poriadku. Tento proces sa začal v zásade myšlienkou, ktorá bola potencovaná zlým stavom infraštruktúry, konkrétne tepelného hospodárstva niekedy v roku 2014, preto lebo naozaj Rooseveltova nemocnica ide na jednom veľkokapacitnom parnom kotli, čiže keď padne kotol, padne Roosevelt, bude problém všade. Áno. Začali sme to nejakým spôsobom riešiť a tá myšlienka sa kreovala a začali sme pripravovať celý rozsah investície. Tento celý proces nám v zásade trval do roku 2019. Čiže od nejakého začiatku zhmotňovania tej myšlienky až po ukončenie verejného obstarávania, ale nie samotný podpis zmluvy, to boli nejaké, povedzme, 4 roky. Odvtedy, ako sme dali posúdiť Úradu pre verejné obstarávanie, naše verejné obstarávanie, došlo samozrejme k zmene vlády, čo znamená veľmi politickú otázku. A vzhľadom k tomu, že lehota viazanosti ponúk je obmedzená v zásade a nie je možné, alebo nebolo nám umožnené reálne podpísať zmluvu, lebo naozaj do toho vstúpil aj COVID, čomu rozumiem, že to je objektívna prekážka, tak toho času v septembri uplynú 2 roky od toho, ako sme legitímny proces verejného obstarávania ukončili. Rozumejte, rekonštrukcia za plnej prevádzky je plánovaná na 4 roky, čiže v zásade sme už 1/4 v realite mohli mať úplne normálne za sebou. Potom sa vyjadrím k tomu procesu tej rekonštrukcie za plnej prevádzky, k tomu mám tiež nejaký point. Čiže teraz je naozaj politické rozhodnutie, ktoré budeme so všetkým všudy prijímať, že či teda sa Rooseveltova nemocnica bude jej umožnené sa rekonštruovať, alebo dôjde k nejakému inému politickému rozhodnutiu. Čiže ten samotný proces trval u nás 4 roky. A teraz si myslím, že to je ten okamih, že výstavba, ak teda môžem otvoriť tú tému, versus rekonštrukcia, lebo si myslím, že to je extrémne dôležité. To, čo som povedala, že treba zvažovať veľmi dôkladne potreby každého jedného regiónu. Banskobystrický kraj obsluhuje povedzme 860 000 obyvateľov, čiže táto nemocnica má v rámci svojho rozšíreného programu takýto spád. Je niekoľko programov, ktoré sú riešené iba v rámci Rooseveltovej nemocnice, čiže je koncovou nemocnicou pre všetkých pacientov z celého Slovenska. má veľmi špecifické postavenie, preto lebo v rámci jedného areálu je aj detská fakultná nemocnica. V tom istom meste je aj ústav srdcovo-cievnych chorôb. Je taká, by som až povedala, prepojenosť s pupočnou šnúrou medzi detskou fakultnou nemocnicou a Rooseveltovou nemocnicou, lebo to je v rámci jedného areálu. Teda dve samostatné nemocnice, ktoré z hľadiska prevádzkových nákladov si vzájomne pomáhajú. Čiže keby došlo k výstavbe nemocnice na inom mieste, tak náklady na prevádzku detskej fakultnej nemocnice vzrastú o desiatky percent, preto lebo Rooseveltová nemocnica zabezpečuje veľkú časť logistických služieb pre detskú fakultnú nemocnicu. Toto je podľa mňa celkom zásadný argument. Ďalší argument je otázka veľkosti nemocnice v prípade jej výstavby niekde v okolí a nie rekonštrukcie. A tam si treba povedať aj to, že v mnohých prípadoch sa zabudá uvažovať o sekundárnych nákladoch, ktoré súvisia s výstavbou novej nemocnice. To znamená infraštruktúra, čo je veľmi zásadné rozhodnutie, siete a samotná mobilita, preto lebo náklady spojené s prepravou nie sú nízke a treba presvedčiť alebo treba riešiť a konzultovať aj s lokálnymi stakeholdermi, ktorí zabezpečujú prepravu oblasti teda presunu obyvateľstva, sú to nové autobusové spojenia, musíte urobiť nové napojenia na hlavné dopravné uzly, čo sú, myslím si, že všetci vieme, že veľmi vysoké náklady. A teraz, keď sa trošička vrátim, je tiež dôležité sa zamyslieť nad tým, že v prípade, že presuniete z funkčného objektu, ktorý je nejakým spôsobom dimenzovaný a vyzerá to tak, že logistika je celkom efektívna, lebo prepočty a analýzy HTA to je jednoducho aj hodnota za peniaze nasvedčujú. Keď to prenesiete do miesta B, je tiež politicky veľmi náročné zdôvodniť, že čo sa spraví s objektom, ktorý zostane prázdny. Pritom bol už čiastočne zrekonštruovaný a boli do neho investované zdroje, napríklad z eurofondov alebo iných zdrojov a nie v malom meradle. Čiže napríklad do Rooseveltovej nemocnice spolu s detskou nemocnicou bolo už doposiaľ investovaných takmer 50 miliónov eur. Čo tým chcem povedať je, že hot floor, teda tá najdrahšia časť nemocnice je už v rámci Rooseveltovej nemocnice z prvej fázy eurofondov v roku 2013 zrekonštruovaná, kde je vlastne tá logistika centralizovaná a naozaj aj laboratória a operačné sály aj áro vytvárajú jeden funkčný celok, ktorý je na 2 poschodiach a koridory, čo sa týka logistiky a toku, sú veľmi efektívne nastavené. Čiže tam sa treba naozaj zamýšľať nad tým, že či tá infraštruktúra, ktorá je vybudovaná, je postačujúca alebo nie je postačujúca na to, aby boli aj do budúcna zabezpečené nejakým spôsobom efektívne tie toky. To je jedno, či sa rozprávame o logistike personálu, pacientov alebo tovarov, lebo to je jasné, že o týchto troch veciach treba veľmi racionálne uvažovať. A tým chcem povedať, že my sme na základe tých všetkých analýz, ktoré sme spracovali, usúdili, že komponovanie toho nášho objektu tej nemocnice je dostatočne efektívne na to, aby vedelo zvládať aj nápor do budúcna. Ale tým nechceme povedať, že neexistuje situácia, čo je práve, že existuje situácia, že v iných mestách, v iných regiónoch je veľmi racionálne postaviť novú nemocnicu, napríklad na Zelenej lúke a presunúť ju z miesta A do miesta B. Teda sme toho názoru, že tá investícia v tomto okamihu do Rooseveltovej nemocnice ako do rekonštrukcie sa nám javí z viacerých uhlov pohľadu, teda aj pre pacienta, aj pre zamestnancov efektívnejšia ako a v zásade nižšia, ako keby sme presúvali nemocnicu do iného miesta. Toto ale teda ešte raz prizvukujem, nemusí byť realita vo všetkých regiónoch. Myslím si, že martinská myšlienka je veľmi podložená dátami a toto je práve ten príklad, kedy v Martine sa podľa tých analýz, ako ich nejakým spôsobom veľmi okrajovo teda poznám, alebo sme o tom diskutovali, je racionálnejšie postaviť novú nemocnicu. Ďakujem.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. I would now ask also my former colleague Gerd Uwe from the European Investment Bank to present us the financial opportunities that the EIB is offering for financing hospital infrastructure, and maybe present some best practices from abroad, how the EIB got involved in financing new hospital infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. Yes, hospitals. Closer? Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yes, hospitals are complicated. They are complex. It takes an awful lot of time to prepare them. But one thing doesn't change. You need money for them. So the European Investment Bank can offer multiple products. Standard loans, we can blend our loans with grant money from the European Union. We can blend our loans with money from the national budget. And therefore, it is of utmost importance that whoever is setting up this investment program for hospitals starts talking to us as soon as possible. Because one thing you don't have when you build a hospital, time to waste. I have done, in my previous life as a loan officer in Germany, a program with the Land of Brandenburg, where we agreed to finance the investment plan of the Land Brandenburg over a number of years, which was then grouped into one big loan we gave to the Land of Brandenburg. And that's, for instance, something Slovakia can also think about. Another structure we have used is that we finance only the investment or the building of one particular hospital. And this will be, the best structure will be decided once my colleagues from Jaspers, from our technical department, and from our loan department start to talk to the Ministry of Health, who is setting up the investment program for hospitals in Slovakia. And I only can ask you to use the technical advisory services the bank has to offer in technical advisory in terms of how to structure the hospitals technically, but also financially. And another advantage of the European Investment Bank is we can offer long tenures. We have heard often enough today, it takes time to build a hospital. Our loans usually match the economic lifetime of a hospital, which in the building part can go up to 25 years. For the technical equipment, it's a shorter period of time, of course. Those are the main points I would like to raise from a funding perspective, and only repeat my request, start talking to us basically now.
Thank you, Gerd. Just to maybe give an idea to the audience, which is also connected online, not only here in presence, what are usually the financial conditions of the EIB for hospital infrastructure? Why is it more competitive than commercial funding?
Well, to start with, the European Investment Bank can fund itself on the capital markets at very low rates. And that advantage we pass on completely to our clients. So already the base rate is much lower than you see it with normal standard commercial banks. Another feature is that usually during construction, you only pay interest, you don't repay the loan amount. So you only start repaying once you actually have the hospital and you start generating revenues. And another feature is the already mentioned long tenures of up to 25 years, which are usually very difficult for commercial banks to match.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. One more question. Slovakia has an allocation of around 900 million euro from the RRP for new hospital infrastructure. We're also getting into discussions with the European Commission regarding the European Structural Investment Funds for the new programming period, which could be used for new hospital infrastructure. Let's say several millions of euro. We also have capital investments from the state budget. What would be, let's say, the next step, or what should be the approach of the Slovak government if there is a gap of 0.5 billion euro for financing the number of hospitals that will be, let's say, a political priority? Should it be a loan which a beneficiary, let's say the hospital or the region, should consider? Or are we talking about a framework loan that the Ministry of Finance could cover?
The Ministry of Finance should start by, or together with the Ministry of Health, by presenting to us the investment program as a whole. And then my colleagues, together with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Health, will develop what is actually best for the Slovak Republic in the light of the grant amount available and the funding gap. The EIB can fund up to 50% of the total project cost. However, we have a certain limitation when grant money from the European Union is involved. Our loan plus any grant money from the European Union may not exceed 90% of the project cost. The rest, the other 10%, can come from the Slovak budget or from private equity or wherever, but us plus European Union, 90% maximum. And therefore, it might make sense to group more than one hospital in the overall project, but that will be decided in cooperation with the line ministries and my colleagues from Luxembourg.
Thank you very much. Marcin, I will turn now to you. You already are gaining the fruits of the new infrastructure in Kraków. We already talked about the preparation of this project, but what positive effects did this construction build for the patients and for the city of Kraków? Before the discussion, we talked a lot about the financial soundness of the hospital, that actually the hospital in Kraków is generating profit, which compared to Slovak hospitals is really science fiction. We also talked about the involvement of new technologies and startups in the processes. We also talked about how many positive effects the new hospital infrastructure brought during the COVID crisis as well. So if you could maybe share your experience with this.
Okay, that's true. But if you allow me, I will just make short comments, 5 minutes comments of all of this that has been said. I think that we should put our attention on one very important thing, what Peter at the beginning said. What are our time limits? Our time limit is 2026. So if I must be honest with you, if there is not on the table the ready project with the building permit, we probably don't have enough time. So we must because I understand that here are only the people who really want to build something and to create something, so they must answer the very serious question. We don't have a time. If there must be the very limited chance that we will manage with those hospitals, we must have, for example, first, very serious help from the Ministry of Health or from the government. You can imagine how long will take the process of the not only construction of this hospital. At least you need at least 1.5 or even 2 years for the architects. For the work. If there will be not support with the permit, with the limitation of the environment, things like this, probably we are out of the time and will not be able to manage with this. Of course, the second thing is about the financing. I am very, very happy with the offer of the European Investment Bank, because this is a really good offer, and I believe this is a good offer. But what has been mentioned, the condition of the hospital, not only in Slovakia, but also in Poland, is that if somebody look on the statement, annual statement of those hospitals, no one will give you money for the building of the new hospital. Believe me. Because this is the problem of the condition, financial condition. So only chance if someone thinks seriously about building the hospital, this must be against the support of the government, which helped maybe took the loan from the European investment banks and set up 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many projects of the new hospital in Slovakia, and it will be able to create those hospitals. But back to the question that Peter asked me, of course, there was many problem of the building of the new hospital. But believe me, any people who have maybe some, I don't say even problem, but they don't believe in this hospital. They said what this hospital will create the new quality and something like this. There is no person like this now. After 1.5 years of COVID, everyone believes that the new infrastructure of the hospital in Kraków-Prokocim was the best experience and the best solution. Why? During the COVID, we were the biggest COVID hospital in Poland. We have, in the third wave of the COVID, we have over 600 patients in hospital. It was possible only because we have the modern hospital, which allow to make the telenotherapy in all patients that are in the hospital. Of course, there is a limitation, because you can imagine that we were prepared for make the oxygen therapy in all beds in the hospital, but not in the same moment. We have a serious problem when there was a 600 patient in the hospital. But what was the result of the new hospital? The result of the new hospital was that we create the hospital that is flexible. It worked like puzzles, it worked like Lego bricks. We're able to create the next COVID unit, because there was a day that we have 30, 40 patients in one day additional bringing to the hospital. We were able to create in 24 hours another COVID unit, and we are able to recreate or back to the normal activity in the 48 hours. Why? Because we have the modern infrastructure. We have the modern infrastructure with the good distribution of every material in the hospital, because we have a modern hospital which allow us to create the road dirt and clean. We have the modern hospital which allow us in the same moment. We didn't stop the working in the normal way for even one day. We work like, I don't know how to name this, but if we were able once they bring more patients with the COVID, but the next day bring the more patients without COVID. And we didn't stop to work and to operate for even one day, even if we had over the 600 patient COVID, of which almost 100 patient was the intensive care unit patient. We don't stop the operation. We are the trauma center, one trauma center in our region, so we cannot stop the heart disease. We cannot stop the stroke. We cannot stop the car accidents. We didn't stop even for one moment. Of course, now we have very difficult situation. After 1.5 years of the COVID, we're back to the normal. But I think that we must once more time said what we mean the normal, because I think that Polish public health will not back to normal, and we must redefine what we mean the normal. We have a number of problems, starting from the staff, starting from the expectation of the salary, but of course I have this luck that I operate the new hospital. The new hospital which allow me to be flexible to what happened on the market. A modern hospital, because we are the modern hospital. I was very happy to learn this presentation from this lady from Siemens, because believe me, some of the solutions that she present are present in my hospital. Of course, maybe not the same system that was presenting, but believe me that this is made in the hospital in Kraków. It means that there is a technician guy who make the MRI, but the doctor sitting in her home or she's home and making the result of this examination. Those things are operating. Those things are in the hospital in Kraków. We go further. I talked with Peter, we eat the lunch together, and I talked with Peter that the new hospital are some kind of extra tool that if we want to reach something, this is the best moment. I think that I am now in the best moment of my life. Why? Because I received the new hospital which give me the chance to make something new. That's why I start to cooperate with the startups. I ask my question if the new hospital is a good environment for the startups. It is. I have at least 10 to 50 startups in the university hospital in Krakow, which develop the new procedure. We develop especially, those are the medical startups, because they are very popular now as a new technologies with the IT, with the artificial intelligence, which are supposed to replace, maybe not replace, but help the doctors to set up the good diagnosis. Of course, we didn't agree with Peter, but I told him what is the plan for the autumn. On the autumn, we are planning in Krakow to organize the first hackathon, medical hackathon in Europe. The medical hackathon in Europe, which will be held in new headquarters of the hospital in Kraków-Prokocim, and which idea would be to create the useful tools which help the doctors to put the right diagnosis. And I hope, maybe we'll discuss this later, maybe the Peter with his department will involved in this process, because this is everything what new hospital can give you. But for me, the crucial things, and everyone all this in this room should say one thing: there must be strong support the government if we want to manage with those money, because we really don't have time.
Thank you, Marcin. I'm really looking at Poland as an example, because your hospital, but there are also other hospitals which were built in the current and previous programming period from structural funds or other funds in Poland, such as Toruń, Poznań, Kraków. We are not only talking about one hospital. There are several hospitals which were built in Poland, our neighboring country, in the past years. And we need these good examples also in Slovakia, and follow these good examples. I would like to ask maybe a question to Adam. Adam, how do you see, what is the appetite of the European Commission for financing hospital infrastructure in the new programming period? Maybe also based on the past experiences with COVID. We know that healthcare infrastructure is a negative priority for the European Commission. How do you see the possibilities of financing this infrastructure from EU funds in the new programming period?
Well, truly speaking, it's difficult because, well, I don't exactly know what is the appetite, but certainly it is bigger than it was 7 years ago. Yes. Now we have two sources, more or less of equal size, two sources of funding from the European Union, European Commission. One is the RF, and second one is ESIF. In the financial multi-annual financial framework of 2014-2020, there was a kind of hesitance and let's say restrictions against new, especially hospital infrastructure, because there was a quite common perception that hospital infrastructure, it might be abandoned, it might be excessive, let's say, it might be excessive in the Central European countries, and there is a necessity to support non-hospital forms of care. I think that in the current financial perspective, the perception has changed a bit because of the importance of health problems in general. But once again, I would like to refer to the European semester and the country recommendations which are listed in the European semester, because this is the kind of official statement from the European Union entities. And the European semester and the recommendation indicates what are the areas which Slovakia should tackle. And if this is indicated in the European semester, it would be easier to I would say, persuade, to convince the European Commission administration to agree on certain priorities. Among those which I remember is that a strengthening of primary care, yes, of course, and also improvement of working conditions and increasing the number of personnel which is missing. But you have to analyze the European semester recommendations, and I think this would be the correct way to see what was diagnosed, what was identified as the weaknesses of the system in Slovakia, and this could be addressed by the investments. So I would refer rather to this document than saying myself.
Thank you. And we are slowly but surely approaching to the end of the discussion. I was really afraid that there is not going to be much time to discuss a lot of things, and I think we still have a lot of open topics, but what I would like to close this session with is maybe an input from Ms. Lapuníková. Pani Lapuníková, ako vidíte možnosti Banskobystrickej nemocnice ukončiť a zrealizovať ten projekt rekonštrukcie do konca roku 2026, pretože takisto ako Martin povedal, je to, čo nemáme k dispozícii momentálne je časový komfort.
Absolútne súhlasím, že čas je v tomto okamihu náš zásadný nepriateľ, preto v prípade, že nebude priestor na to, aby sme podpísali túto zmluvu, lebo naozaj my sme už pred podpisom zmluvy, tak a s tým sme už tak nejak stotožnení, že naozaj nové verejné obstarávanie by dávalo priestor a tam čas, vzhľadom na to, že už máme nejakú skúsenosť a naozaj tie úpravy, ktoré by nastali v zmluve alebo v tom samotnom projekte nie sú tak náročné, takže takto o rok by sme mohli podpísať zmluvu. Samozrejme, že ak by vláda urobila uznesenie aj s alokáciou zdrojov na tento projekt. A plánovaný čas na rekonštrukciu sú 4 roky za plnej prevádzky, čo si myslíme, že je naozaj realizovateľné na základe tých skúseností, ktoré máme. Čiže u nás by to bolo tak, že LTT. Ale hypoteticky sa to, myslím si, že dá zvládnuť, lebo naozaj ten nácvik za plného chodu a operačné sály rekonštruovať za plnej prevádzky naozaj vôbec nie je ľahké. To viem, o čom rozprávam. To je to najhoršie, čo môže byť. Čiže rekonštrukcia hotelovej časti by nemala byť takým veľkým problémom. Takže si myslím, že za 4 roky je to zvládnutelné.
Ďakujem pekne. Máme tu samozrejme aj v obecenstve predstaviteľov aj iných nemocníc, konkrétne teda univerzitnej nemocnice v Martine, kde viem, že ten projekt je v pomerne pokročilom štádiu z hľadiska plánovania a prípravy projektovej dokumentácie. Chýba tam ešte stavebné a územné konanie, ale z hľadiska pripravenosti projektov za nás, za Ministerstvo investícií, vnímame, že na Slovensku máme určité projekty, ktoré sú v pokročilom štádiu prípravy, či už sa bavíme o Banskobystrickej nemocnici alebo aj o Martinskej nemocnici, a preto si myslím, že bude veľmi dôležité dávať ohľad predovšetkým na tie projekty, ktoré sú už v takomto štádiu pripravenosti, keďže ten rok 2026 sa nám blíži a záverom tiež tej diskusie bolo, že príprava a plánovanie takéto nemocnice je veľmi zdĺhavý proces. Nevieme predikovať, aké prekážky sa tam vyskytnú počas rôznych častí prípravy, či už v rámci verejného obstarávania alebo stavebného územného konania. Preto si myslím, že teda by sme sa mali na Slovensku zamerať na kvalitne pripravené projekty, aby sme teda do konca roku 2026 aj zrealizovali tieto nemocnice. Boli tam aj otázky, ktoré sa týkali viacerých tém, ktoré sme už rozdiskutovali. Ja si myslím, že rozdelenie financovania z, povedzme, nemocničnej infraštruktúry, z plánu obnovy na hrubú stavbu a, povedzme, zariadenie je taktiež jedna z možností. Takže na tú otázku určite odpovedáme áno, ale je to skôr samozrejme téma na diskusiu s Ministerstvom zdravotníctva. Ale záverom tejto diskusie by som chcel možno zhrnúť 3 najdôležitejšie body, ktoré budú dôležité pri príprave a realizácii nových nemocníc na Slovensku. V prvom rade to, čo bolo pomenované, potrebujeme silnú podporu zo strany vlády a silné politické rozhodnutie o tom, ktoré nemocnice sa majú realizovať a akým spôsobom, či už je to výstavba alebo rekonštrukcia. Čiže v prvom rade je to rozhodnosť a rýchlosť rozhodovania vlády Slovenskej republiky. Druhým dôležitým bodom je pripravenosť projektov, čiže snaha venovať sa predprojektovej príprave projektovej dokumentácie, pretože ten čas je neúprosný. A vypočuli sme si aj v podstate z praxe ľudí, že príprava nemocničného projektu trvá niekoľko rokov. Aj Henrik, aj Martin spomínal, že sa môže jednať o 8 až 10 rokov z hľadiska prípravy a realizácie takýchto projektov, čiže je to veľmi zdĺhavý proces. No a tretím dôležitým aspektom sú samozrejme peniaze. A v tomto ohľade si myslím, že máme na Slovensku z hľadiska peňazí a disponibility zdrojov najmenší problém. Máme tu veľký balík prostriedkov z plánu obnovy. Rovnako za nás, za Ministerstvo investícií, budeme sa snažiť vyrokovať čo najatraktívnejší balík prostriedkov z európskych štrukturálnych a investičných fondov na nové nemocnice v novom programovom období. A zároveň tu máme aj iné zdroje, ktoré sú návratného charakteru, ktoré ponúka či už Európska investičná banka, alebo iné investičné inštitúcie, alebo aj komerčné inštitúcie. Takže toľko k debate o nových a moderných nemocniciach na Slovensku. Ja veľmi pekne ďakujem aj Marčinovi, že meral tú cestu z Krakova.
I would like to use the opportunity to say you that you have very good consul in Krakow, Tomasz Kaszaj, and believe me, use this guy because we go cooperate for many years. And if someone from you want to visit the Krakow to share experience, to see how is the balance between the very modern and very future hospital, but the hospital which is somehow put in some frame which is not very expensive in the operation. I would like you invite to Krakow. Let we stay in contact. And that's.
Thank you. I was there several times in your hospital, and it's truly an experience and a great adventure to see such a beautiful building built just across the borders. Ďakujem pani riaditeľke Lapuníkovej, že sa tu zúčastnila taktiež s nami.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne.
Pánovi Gerdovi z Európskej investičnej banky. Thank you very much, Gerd. A ďakujem taktiež našim online panelistom. Thank you, Adam Kozierkiewicz, and thank you, Henrik, for joining our discussion. Thank you very much. Dovidenia. Ďakujem pekne.